In 1868, the 14th Amendment was written and passed by Congress. It stated that all those born in the United States are citizens, and no one can deny the citizens of the United States their rights to life, liberty, property, and equal protections of the law. And yet, here we are. The struggle to reach equality has been going on in America since its creation, with many notable leaders for the cause, such as Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. These two men were key to the civil rights movement. Their resistance against oppression and each of their large group of followers helped pass many civil rights laws. With all they were able to accomplish, they did it separate from each other, and people in the past and present wonder how much more would have been done had they worked together. As the struggle continues to be fought in the 21st century, new leaders and advocates are finding new ways to fight. We came up with a research question that asks, what are the impacts of this separation between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. on African Americans in the 21st century? At the end of their lives, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. showed evidence of putting aside their differences in order to work together to reach their shared goal, and these steps towards creating a united front, while not achieved in their lifetimes, has been achieved in the African American society today as seen by the Black Lives Matter movement.
Despite their shared goal, despite answering questions about each other often, and despite both of them being figureheads of the same movement, Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X only met once. In his book, Martin and Malcolm and America, A Dream or a Nightmare, James Cone described their meeting on March 26, 1964, when both men were heading to their respective interviews after attending the U.S. Senate's debate over a civil rights bill. It was Malcolm X who initiated the meeting, and Cone speculated that he approached MLK due to his efforts to, quote, develop a new image of himself so he could join in the mainstream of the civil rights movement, end quote. Near the end of their lives, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were moving towards each other's ideologies. Malcolm X showed signs of wanting to work with other civil rights leaders, as seen by his creation of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, and by initiating this meeting, many believe he wanted MLK to be part of his efforts to unite the African American community. In the last 3 years of his life, while MLK never wavered on his nonviolence view, he became radical on how he viewed dealing with poverty and encouraging African Americans to be proud of who they are. Similarly to how Malcolm X wanted them to be proud of their African heritage. This shows how the two men were heading towards uniting because they showed signs of seeing benefits and other ways of protesting and chose to implement parts of the other strategy into their own. Had their lives not been tragically cut short, there is evidence to show that one day they will have joined forces.
This is Justin Harris talking to Deezer Reed today, and today we're talking about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and their separation of the two men. How would you describe Martin Luther King Jr.?
Martin Luther King was a leader.
How would you describe Malcolm X?
Malcolm X was a different type of leader. He was more, if the white person messes with you, fight back.
Do you think the separation between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King has an impact on the present day?
Yeah. Some people are like, fight back. Martin Luther King was all about, don't fight, I go to jail and let them talk to you any type of way. But Malcolm X is like, nah, forget all that. We're gonna do what we want to do.
Would you consider the Black Lives Matter organization a united front of American fighting?
Yeah. The reason being is because I think they have like a bunch of organizations and stuff.
How do you think the separation between these two civil rights leaders impact Black Lives Matter?
Today, I don't know. I feel like cops really like impacted Black Lives Matter and all of that. All the racial stuff that's going on today. That's what's really impacting it. I don't really think they are.
How do you feel about the protest during the national anthem?
I like it. I like it a lot. They protesting against something. People. There's a lot of racist stuff going on.
Would you have knelt along with others NFL players? And what are your arguments for doing this? SOB.
Yeah, I would have. My argument for this is that there's nothing wrong with it. But I'm African American. I feel like, Caucasian people of different ethnicities or different races would think otherwise. But there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of racist things going on today.
While the civil rights movement accomplished amazing feats, there is still one more to be done until we reach equality in the United States, and the Black Lives Matter movement fights to reach that goal. This widespread movement started out as a simple tweet on July 13, 2013, with the hashtag Black Lives Matter. By the time of the Michael Brown case in 2014 of August, the hashtag and movement had grown enough that Black Lives Matter appeared an average of 58,747 times per day in the weeks following Brown's death. The Black Lives Matter movement is about building power and intervening in violence in black communities. But what is repeated throughout its website is it encompasses everyone in the black communities of the United States. Its goal is to create a world free of anti-blackness, where every black person has the social, economic, and political power to thrive. What this means is that the Black Lives Matter movement is gathering everyone together to fight for the goal that they have been working towards for centuries. The reason that so many people have flocked to Black Lives Matter is it is more than an organization. The movement is what people are flocking towards, the idea. The Black Lives Matter movement has managed to create an organization based only on fighting for the same goal, without restricting people to how they should protest or fight back oppression. It is like if the civil rights movement had had its own organization, and that is why it is the United Front for the struggle for equality.
How would you describe Martin Luther King?
He's a good man, preacher, activist, nonviolent.
So how would you describe Malcolm X?
He's a social activist and a civil rights activist. But he viewed the opposite of Martin Luther King, that he wanted, fight oppression with war.
So who do you think made a bigger impact on the present day for equal rights?
I say like politics wise, Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
But as a mentality wise, like I think like growing up, I idolized Martin Luther King, but now I see why Malcolm X was right. Because I think that you can only get stuff done through fear and through war. Because it's like when you're angry, you get stuff done. So when you want to change, you're more likely to get it done. So that's why I like Malcolm's views now rather than Martin Luther King's views, because and nonviolent stuff ain't all it's could have to be.
Okay, so if Martin and Malcolm were still alive, who do you think the Black Lives Matter movement would have followed?
So I feel like people try to steer towards Malcolm X more, and especially after the Rodney King and the LA riots, they definitely would have listened to Malcolm X more than Martin Luther King.
So how do you feel about unarmed shooting by police officers, people's reactions, and the verdict? Like, how do you feel about that?
Police shootings is wrong. And, I don't think the police should have the ability to kill anybody that's unarmed.
Malcolm X belief focused on creating self-defense for African Americans. So what would be different today? How do you have gained more supporters about working with Martin Luther King Jr.?
I feel like by now there probably would have been a race war. Not the whole race war, but in some cities and states.
Yeah.
So black people would have said, we ain't going for that no more. Y'all don't quit killing our young men, putting our black people in jail, and we gonna fight back. So I feel like that now he would have more supporters, and people would start fighting back more.
So that answered question 10, that you probably would have followed Malcolm X.
Most definitely.
If he was still alive.
And then more black people would bear arms.
Yeah.
In the 1960s, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were playing with the idea of creating a united front for the civil rights movement. But because people have so many opinions on how to handle injustices, one organization is hard to make for everyone to follow. But that doesn't mean everyone can't follow a movement. In the 21st century, movements are no longer started by a preacher giving a moving speech. They are started online and reposted until everyone in the world is talking about it. The idea of using tweets and posts to get messages across is something that older generations have yet to fully grasp. And older organizations such as the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People are slowly starting to pick up on this new trend. The NAACP was created in 1909 and has been called the nation's most influential black organization. but critics are claiming it has been less effective in encountering racism today in comparison to the Black Lives Matter movement. While the NAACP is historically effective organization, its lobbyist methods is less effective with the generation where the most popular activist movement started with a tweet. Its members that are a part of the newest generation of adults understand how to reach more people through media and see the benefits that come from joining forces with the Black Lives Matter movement. A collegiate member of the NAACP, Ms. Brown, also became a member of the Black Lives Matter movement and used her NAACP network to help spread the Black Lives Matter message. This shows how Black Lives Matter movement has become a way for African Americans to come together and advance their activist goals because famous organizations such as the NAACP sees that the movement does not tell its followers how to protest, but simply spreads the message that something must be done and informs the world of the injustices still around that need to be fixed.
The logic behind a united front is simple. It is based on the idea of preventing a divide and conquer approach to resisting the change that needs to happen. Unity in any political or social movement is key to reaching the goal, something that Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X understood but did not manage to achieve in their lifetime. While in the 21st century there is no one organization or person that leads the struggle for equality, there is an idea and movement agreed upon by everyone. The Black Lives Matter movement welcomes everyone in the Black communities of the United States, and other organizations and leaders fighting for equality have allied themselves with the movement, showing that it is the united front for the fight for equal rights. America has come a long way. There is no denying that the country is better than it once was. The civil rights leaders in the last half of the 20th century fought hard for the relative equality between races America sees today, and activists in the 21st century follow their lead, planning on fighting until the 14th Amendment rings true for all.